The history of philosophy does not begin with Aristotle, but the historiography of philosophy does. Aristotle was the first philosopher who systematically studied, recorded, and criticized the work of previous philosophers. In the first book of the Metaphysics, he summarizes the teachings of his predecessors, from his distant intellectual ancestors Pythagoras and Thales, up to Plato, his teacher for 20 years. To this day, he is one of the most copious and most reliable sources of our information about philosophy in its infancy. Aristotle offers a classification of the earliest Greek philosophers in accordance with the structure of his system of the four causes. Scientific inquiry, he believed, was above all inquiry into the causes of things, and there were four different kinds of cause: the material cause, the efficient cause, the formal cause, and the final cause. To give a crude illustration of what he had in mind, when Alfredo cooks a risotto, the material causes of the risotto are the ingredients that go into it. The efficient cause is the chef himself. The recipe is the formal cause, and the satisfaction of the clients of his restaurant is the final cause. Aristotle believed that a scientific understanding of the universe demanded an inquiry into the operation in the world of causes of each of these kinds. Early philosophers on the Greek coast of Asia Minor concentrated on the material cause. They sought the basic ingredients of the world we live in. Thales and his successors posed the following question: at a fundamental level, is the world made out of water, or air, or fire, or earth, or a combination of some or all of these? Even if we have an answer to this question, Aristotle thought, that is clearly not enough to satisfy our scientific curiosity. The ingredients of a dish do not put themselves together. There needs to be an agent operating upon them by cutting, mixing, stirring, heating, or the like. Some of these early philosophers, Aristotle tells us, were aware of this and offered conjectures about the agents of change and development in the world. Sometimes it would be one of the ingredients themselves. Fire was perhaps the most promising suggestion, as being the least torpid of the elements. More often it would be some agent or pair of agents, both more abstract and more picturesque, such as love or desire or strife or the good and the bad. Meanwhile, in Italy, again according to Aristotle, there were around Pythagoras mathematically inclined philosophers whose inquiries took quite a different course. A recipe, besides naming ingredients, will contain a lot of numbers. So many grams of this, so many littles of that. The Pythagoreans were more interested in the numbers in the world's recipe than in the ingredients themselves. They supposed, Aristotle says, that the elements of numbers were the elements of all things, and the whole of the heavens was a musical scale. They were inspired in their quest by their discovery that the relationship between the notes of the scale played on a lyre corresponded to different numerical ratios between the lengths of the strings. They then generalized this idea that qualitative differences might be the upshot of numerical differences. Their inquiry, in Aristotle's terms, was an inquiry into the formal causes of the universe. Coming to his immediate predecessors, Aristotle says that Socrates preferred to concentrate on ethics rather than study the world of nature, while Plato, in his philosophical theory, combined the approaches of the schools of both Thales and Pythagoras. But Plato's theory of ideas, while being the most comprehensive scientific system yet devised, seemed to Aristotle, for reasons that he summarizes here and develops in a number of his treatises, to be unsatisfactory on several grounds. There were so many things to explain, and the ideas just added new items calling for explanation. They did not provide a solution, they added to the problem. Most dissertations that begin with literature searches seek to show that all work hitherto has left a gap that will now be filled by the author's original research. Aristotle's metaphysics is no exception. His not too hidden agenda is to show how previous philosophers neglected the remaining member of the quartet of causes, the final cause, which was to play a most significant role in his own philosophy of nature. The earliest philosophy, he concluded, is on all subjects full of babble, since in its beginnings it is but an infant. A philosopher of the present day, reading the surviving fragments of the earliest Greek thinkers, is impressed not so much by the questions they were asking, as by the methods they used to answer them. After all, the book of Genesis offers us answers to the 4 causal questions set by Aristotle. If we ask for the origin of the first human being, for instance, we are told that the efficient cause was God, that the material cause was the dust of the earth, that the formal cause was the image and likeness of God, and that the final cause was for man to have dominion over the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, and every living thing on earth. Yet Genesis is not a work of philosophy. On the other hand, Pythagoras is best known not for answering any of the Aristotelian questions, but for proving the theorem that the square on the hypotenuse of a right-angled triangle is equal in area to the sum of the squares on the other 2 sides. Thales again was believed by later Greeks to have been the first person to make an accurate prediction of an eclipse in the year 585 before Christ. These are surely achievements in geometry and astronomy, not philosophy. The fact is that the distinction between religion, science, and philosophy was not as clear as it became in later centuries. The works of Aristotle and his master Plato provide a paradigm of philosophy for every age, and to this day anyone using the title philosopher is claiming to be one of their heirs. Writers in 21st century philosophy journals can be seen to be using the same techniques of conceptual analysis, and often to be repeating or refuting the same theoretical arguments, as are to be found in the writings of Plato and Aristotle. But in those writings there is much else that would not nowadays be thought of as philosophical discussion. From the 6th century before Christ onwards, elements of religion, science, and philosophy ferment together in a single cultural cauldron. From our distance in time, philosophers, scientists, and theologians can all look back to these early thinkers as their intellectual forefathers.